OKS Youth Ministry Podcast, where three of the OKS Youth Ministers talk about youth ministry. I'm Michael Deese, and I am joined by Jeremy Crow and Hunter Puckett and Riley the intern. How are you guys doing?
Fair to Midland.
Oh, yeah?
Doing fantastic.
Yeah.
We didn't get together and record last week, so it's kind of sad. But two things came from that. One, Charles Elliott and the Lads Leaders Group, they do a fantastic job.
That's true.
And I love it. We've already gotten Lads going at Flint, so we're pumped about that.
I think people are really upset that they didn't get to hear my voice last week.
That's probably what it was. Well, I think I was more upset that it just wasn't the normal intro.
Yeah, that's probably true, too. It was Jeremy doing like, hey, youth ministry.
But then also, we also missed on the opportunity to wish Jeremy a happy birthday.
Yeah, we did.
What was it, 50?
Yes.
50 years old.
Minus some other numbers.
Okay.
Minus 10. 40.
The big 4-0.
What's it like to be 40?
Feels a lot like 39.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. I will say, though, and I think I've told y'all this before, but I have never felt like old. Like that my body's tired, that I'm like I seriously felt like I was still like 22, 23. I could do whatever we did, in college. It wasn't a big deal until about 38. And then something switched, and like 38, mid 38, I would like get up in the morning. I was like, oh, my back hurts, or like, my knee would be sore. I was like, man, what has happened to me? I was 23 until I was 37.
You're going to get one of those, what was it, the copper sleeve? Knee,
don't think
sleeves.
I don't have one. Don't think I don't have one.
Run over to Academy real quick.
Well, I have established that I am allergic to poison ivy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is bad.
Very bad.
Bad.
Shout out to the Beltline Youth Group for our work day. We had a great time, other than Michael.
It was really, really good. And my whole house is infested with poison ivy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great. I love it so much. Have not wished for death this whole week.
Yet.
Better. No, I have several times. Yeah. In fact, I can't even just sit here without scratching. So, but yeah, it's been great. So, what do you guys want to talk about today?
Today is a very special topic, I guess, for us, because it's youth ministry as a career. Why to get into youth ministry, and maybe why not to get into youth ministry. But we're going to talk about just some pros and cons today of youth ministry, what that looks like, kind of going along with our series that we're doing. So who wants to start off? We're going to start off, just for our listeners, we're going to start off with cons, and then we're going to end the episode building it back up.
Yeah.
My favorite con is Con Air with Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah, that's a good movie.
It's
Nicolas Cage,
one of the finest accurate Southern accents I've ever heard in a movie.
Like he won like a Oscar or something for that.
Why?
That performance, and then he like got into some financial trouble and just accepted every single job that was ever offered to him, and his career just.
Was that around the same time as National
Tanked.
Treasure 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Is there only 2?
Yes, I think there's 3.
Also, word on the street.
But there's only 2 with him.
There's a new Fast and Furious coming out next year.
I know,
the last one.
and it's gonna have.
It's not the last one.
Well, that's what
it's the last one until they're ready to make more money.
They said 7 was the last one.
There'll be another one.
Yeah.
Was it It's like Fast X Part 2 or something.
I don't remember.
But Paul Walker's supposed to be in it. Brian's supposed to be back.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to go back to the street racing. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of cons, Con Air is a great one. But in terms of pros and cons in youth ministry, a con that I would absolutely say is a challenge in youth ministry is, and this is where I probably find myself. There's no ladder to climb if you are happy in youth ministry.
Correct.
And I mean that to be, for example, I've got a brother-in-law right now that has recently taken a job as a principal. Well, he started as a teacher, and then he moved up to, an assistant principal and now principal. And, who knows, maybe one day he's the superintendent. I don't know. But
he is pretty young, isn't
he? Yeah. And so, you've got this clear path for your career that you're building up a ladder. And with each one of those steps, you get more respect, you get more responsibility, you get more pay scale, There's not that in youth ministry with the exception of moving churches, right?
Yes.
If you stay in youth ministry, you have to leave your community, leave your home, move to another town and find a bigger church that has a bigger pay scale, essentially to level up, if you will, in youth ministry. And that's a challenge sometimes because there's not a clear, here's how I move up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and something that's always bugged me is the people that say that youth ministry is like the stepping stone to the next, as if that is a normal thing, that you go from youth ministry to preaching, or whatever that might be.
That's the way that everybody sees that,
and a lot of people do. But for a lot of us, I don't really want another stepping stone. It's youth ministry. I love youth ministry. That's what I want to do. But that is a big con, and I'd say that's probably one of the bigger cons. Is just this idea of low pay, this financial insecurity, this. There's not a whole lot of, like Jeremy said, there's not a whole lot of growth that happens from it.
Yeah, it's like that everybody just believes that every youth minister is a youth minister because they couldn't be a preacher.
Yeah,
or they want to be eventually.
Yeah, or that they want to be and they're just not ready yet, and so they're in training. Basically, they're preacher in training.
And I think it's gotten better over the years because I think we've taken a really big step away from this idea of being at churches for 2 years and leaving, going somewhere else. And I think that churches are starting to really invest in their ministers, and we'll say both, in their ministers as a whole. So we're starting to see a lot of people stay places. A lot of people are happier for longer.
Yeah.
One of the challenges or cons with it is that you get jaded or burnt out towards things at times, and what I mean by that is, and I don't know if you guys experiences this or not. Maybe I'm just a loser, but
you are a loser. But I bet
you.
we've experienced it.
But like for a Sunday for me, Sunday is work, if that makes sense. Like. It's going to my job. Now, am I going to worship with God's people? Am I going to, to a place where we're collectively going to give honor to God and sing praise? Yes. And I love doing that, but I'm at work.
Yeah.
One of the things, like when we go out of town for any kind of thing, if we go on vacation or I want to go to church somewhere else, because I want to go to a church service and not be at work.
And enjoy the service.
And kind of be like a typical lay member, of the congregation, getting to be there and attend and be encouraged in that way. And I am encouraged by being at worship for sure at Coleman, but I'm also on my job, right? And I'm having to deal with tasks and I'm responsible for things. And I feel like a lot of guys get burnt out on that strain upon their own mentality or on their families, feeling or thought of church as a job.
Yeah.
Well, and before we started recording, we mentioned this, and it's the idea that a lot of the people that we graduated with are no longer ministers or no longer in youth ministry or whatever that might be. And we can sit here and we can name a couple that still are. And even for me, that's a little bit younger than both of y'all, even guys that I've graduated with are already out of ministry. That they made it, a couple of years, maybe they realized that it wasn't for them, or they just got burnt out, whatever that might be. And I think it's because we're expecting too much, or maybe people expect too much of us, and we don't know how to step away from the job and enjoy life as well.
Yeah.
People expect us to be, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we are to an extent, but we also have to understand that at some point, at least one day a week, you need to step away and do something else.
Yeah. One of the things I will say is the guys that are still in it that graduate with me or the guys with y'all, they're really good at it for the most part. If they're still in it, they have weathered a lot of these cons, and they found the pros to outweigh the cons that we're going to talk about later. And they're staying true to it because they love it and they're good at it and they're passionate about it. I think there's you kind of weed out the part-time guys. The guys that are just putting half into it.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of go along with the burnout, it leads to this, but it's these long, irregular hours, nights, weekends. Whenever an issue arises, you're the one that's there to fix the issue.
Yeah. I definitely think that there needs to be, you have to draw some boundaries when you are a youth minister. When you're younger, you don't recognize the need for boundaries because you don't have kids. Sometimes you don't have a wife when you've started.
Yep.
You don't have people that depend on you. And that can cause some problems because I'm just thinking back to my first job. I was just doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I was able to go to all the games. I was able to do all the things. And then on any other day, I could invite all the youth group kids over to the church and we could play games all day.
Yep.
And then the next night, it was like, I'm bored. Hey, I'll just call up all the kids in the youth group and we'll go hang out at the church, And then you get married and you just don't have that. You'd rather spend time with your wife, You'd rather spend time with family. You'd rather spend time with your kids. And that version of ministry that you were doing of I'm bored, I want to just do something, it changes, and your responsibility toward people changes, and your priorities change, and it results in some very interesting conversations because of the way that you were doing ministry, and you're having to change it, and people don't like when you change things up, and it can cause some frustrations from parents. It can cause frustrations from your eldership and from your deacons and from whoever else,
Yeah. Well, and I think Jeremy says this a lot, and it's the idea that the members of the youth group need to see him ministering to his family.
That's right.
That's just as important.
Yeah.
But we also don't realize some of the dangerous things we've did when we were younger youth ministers. And now, having Brooklyn and she's 3, I'm like, I can't believe I let these kids do some of these things. Like that's so, then I'm like, I can't believe the parents allowed me to do some of these things.
Yeah.
But it's like, it does change. And I think that's just a season of ministry. And I've apologized to our parents a couple of times, or just kind of mentioned them like, hey guys, listen, I now have Brooklyn and yes, she's 3, but like I'm still trying to figure out balancing a family with a child now and youth ministry and trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
And it is going to be, and one, it's the parents being on board with that. Them understanding, hey, he is making this a priority and he is making sure that, they're in the best hands possible. But he also needs to figure some things out too. And when they support you, it makes it a whole lot easier. They know that, hey, you might not be able to make it every game.
So since we're talking about cons, let's talk about when they don't support you. What do you do?
Oh, man. Wait till they graduate, I guess.
When a parent doesn't support you?
Yeah, when their parents don't support you or the eldership doesn't support you in having to take some...
Well, I think that's one of the things that is absolutely a con is the criticism you receive from people. Whether you did the right thing or wrong thing, that it gets criticized. That like at Coleman, we've got on our roll, it's probably like 550 people, right? And our typical Sunday attendance is around 4. It's essentially there's 400 people that can go complain to my superiors about my actions or about my task or about my job. And not that they do that all the time, but they could, right? And they can go critique. Now, thankfully, we've gotten in a pretty good place where our eldership, when someone has a complaint about something that Steve or Leanne or I do, they'll say, have you talked to Jeremy about that yet? And they won't just jump on me about it. They'll redirect this person and say, hey, let's do this the way that Matthew 19 says, go to this person and talk to them and address the conflict. But taking criticism from parents or from church members is really hard, especially when you've probably done the right thing, but you're still being, kind of belittled about it, or you're being taken advantage of in some way or whatever. And that's really hard, right? When parents don't give you that kind of support that you need to know that they're on board with what direction you're leading their child. And sometimes if they're so oppositional to it, they can become, I don't know if I'd say violent, but like emotionally violent towards you, like that they're intentionally trying to undermine or second guess decisions you're making, things like that really takes that relationship in a really bad place.
Yeah.
Being transparent from the beginning, and it's I'll talk about elders first and then parents. But when you first get to a place, building that relationship with your elders is big. Jeremy being at Coleman for so many years, his elders know who Jeremy is. They know that when someone comes to them with a complaint, they can either they can view it in two different ways. They know who Jeremy is. They know how hard he works. They know who he is, and they can approach it that way, or they can go ask Jeremy what's going on, what's happening. And there's more trust in that relationship to where they're not just immediately blowing up on him. They're going to get down to the bottom of it, see what's actually true. I get it. It's parents, and you're dealing with their kids, and their kids are first priority. And if they feel like their kids are being neglected or mistreated in any way, they're going to be more hostile in that situation. So it's really the elders understanding, hey, let's get to the bottom of what's going on, what's actually happening. And then it's building the trust with the parents too, being transparent with them, letting them see that, hey, you're not here to take over from them. You're not here to be the parent. Yeah, you're here. We talked about before. You're here to be the supplement.
Right.
And explaining to them, hey, in no way, shape, or form am I, undermining your authority. I'm here to help you along the way, and letting them know that y'all are a team. Letting them know that no matter what happens in their child's life or their life, you're here for them.
And I found, we've said this long back in one of our first episodes, but a good way to circumvent these kind of like situations where parents get upset with you about a bad decision, because the reality is we all make a stupid decision at some point. Hunter just said a minute ago he wishes he could go back and take back some of the things he did early in ministry because they were dumb, weren't safe choices for the students or whatever. And
they live though. I didn't lose anybody.
We've all done those kind of things, but parents will forgive a multitude of sin in terms of like your Bible class teaching isn't good, or your event didn't go well, or you forgot something, or you overlooked something, or you forgot to tell people about a timeline or whatever. If they know that you genuinely love and care about their child, and you love their family, and you're trying to invest and pour your heart into ministering to their family. Now, there are times where people either they don't see that or perceive that, or they don't feel that towards you, and they do second guess your decisions. They do try to undermine what you're trying to do. And that's a really hard thing to be, but pouring love into the students kind of helps avoid some of those kind of challenges in the long run.
I thought we made a post from Jeremy about that.
And I think that
it was something around like, I might not be the best Bible class teacher. I might not be the best speaker, but I want them to know that I love their kids unconditionally.
Yeah. That was on Instagram.
Yeah, I think you said that.
Retweet.
But I
Re-X.
Oh, gross. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, so one of the things that I would say is also a con, and this is gonna sound really whiny and complaining, and we're doing a whole list of cons here before we go into pros. We do like youth ministry, and we do think there's good things about it. But
not yet, though. Not
yet.
Not to
one
the
of the cons, as I mentioned earlier, the limited career path kind of stuff. There's not a ladder to climb where you get major raises and that kind of thing. The reality is, youth ministry is typically poorly paid, poorly compensated, comparatively to other preaching ministry roles, right? And ministry in general, a lot of times in churches, whatever role you are is mediocre to poorly compensated compared to your typical business world job, right?
And I just want to say the reason why a lot of youth ministers do that stepping stone thing, they go from youth ministry to preaching, is because they have to provide for their family, and so they have to be a preacher because they can't keep doing what they're doing and provide for their family.
We had a moment where I was sitting at Songfest a few years ago at Coleman. And there was a congregation that was there from Mobile, Alabama. And I had interviewed with this congregation in Mobile like 15 years back.
I went with you to interview.
15 years back.
Do you remember
right?
that?
Yeah. And I talked to them, and they ended up offering me the job. And it just didn't work out at that time. I didn't take the offer. And so I saw this lady. She was the secretary at the office there. I saw her at Songfest at Coleman, which is so far from Mobile, And I was like, hey, how are you? We talked for a minute. I said, well, did you ever hire anybody that was, did a good job there? And she said, yeah, we hired a guy, and he was really good at youth ministry. He did a great job. but he took a job as a preacher and moved, and we lost him. And I said, oh man, I said, well, and like not thinking about it or looking around at all, I said, well, that's the only way you get a raise in youth ministry. I said, you either move to a bigger church or you go become a preacher. And then I turned around and realized one of my elders was sitting like 2 people over from me at the same table. And I was like, oh, whoopsie.
That's awkward.
Whoopsie.
But here's something too.
But it's not inaccurate.
Yeah.
No.
And it's a con, but it's something too that we also understand.
Yeah.
That the preacher is going to get paid more than the youth minister.
Right.
There are more things on the preacher's plate than the youth minister's plate. I was talking, in different ways. I was talking to Justin Smith, Hartzell's preacher,
My boy Justin.
a while ago. Shout out Justin. And he said, here's the easiest way, because he's done both. He said, if something bad happens in the youth group, it's your fault. If something bad happens in the church, it's the preacher's fault.
Right.
He said, but if something bad happens in the youth group, it's still both of your fault. You are held accountable for every single thing that happens. And also, shout out to our elders that listen to this, because if anything bad happens, it's also their fault, and they get the blame for it a lot, along with the ministers, along with the preacher or the youth minister.
Yeah.
But so we get that. We understand. We're not saying that, they have to have equal pay. But it would be nice to see youth ministers treated a little bit more fairly.
And I don't think any of us went into youth ministry because we wanted to get paid a lot of money.
No.
I think all 3 of us have a skill set that we can make more money in different worlds.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we did it because of the things that we're going to talk about here in a minute with the pros. We know the value on the good side of it, right?
Because we've actually gotten to experience it. I think
Yeah.
that's why there's so many. The career of youth ministers is not very long. I think it's 3 years or something is how long the career of the average.
Because they encounter
career of a
more
youth
cons
minister.
than pros.
Yeah,
Early on.
And they're experiencing all this stuff, but they're not in it long enough to see the pros. The good part of it, and and just to be blunt a little bit. When you first start out as a youth minister, you're working at a smaller church who is smaller for a reason.
They took a chance on you.
And they took a chance on you, and they're expecting big things from you, and you are 22 years old and you don't know what in the world you're doing. Yeah. And
you think you know what you're doing. You actually don't know what you're doing.
And
that's okay.
That's okay. They've got to understand that you are going to have growing pains, that you're learning on the move. As you're going, you don't know. I remember one of my first things that I had to deal with as a youth minister was there was this couple, and both families were like big in the church, and 2 of the kids in the youth group, they were dating. They had been for like 2 years or 3 years, and then they broke up. Okay, and as soon as they broke up, the youth group split, and we had
That's awesome.
this side and the other side, and then this whole side of the church didn't come to church for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
Because of a little high school couple broke up, and I was 22 years old, and I'm being blamed for all like, how am I supposed to repair this? I don't know what in the world I'm doing. And the elders were like, what can we do to fix this, Michael?
I just had ramen noodles for dinner. How am I supposed to fix this?
I was like, I had a banana and ramen noodles. It was 84 cents. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I remember people being upset with me about it. And I was like, I didn't do any of this. I don't know what in the world. And so, things like that happen all the time. And you don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. The next time, I'll just tell you, I went to it was after I had moved to a new church. I had another couple, they started dating. And again, both of the families were big in the church and stuff. And I met with both of the families and I said, hey, when they break up, we're not doing this. We're not picking sides, and we're not doing this whole little thing. And they were like, yeah, we agree, And I said, okay, we're not doing this. And we're met with the elders and everything. And they were like, okay. Yeah,
that's when the parents
good.
are going, that's crazy. Why would anybody ever do that? You're like, yeah, you'd be surprised.
Well, when they broke up, inevitably, there was a little bit of that. And I said, hey, do you remember what we said at the beginning of this relationship? I know they dated for 1.5 years. Do you remember what we said at the beginning of this relationship? And the families were like, yeah. And I said, this isn't a big deal. It's just a breakup. We're going to move on.
Your kid's going to be fine.
Kid's going to be okay.
They're probably gonna
Nobody's
find
mad at
better.
anybody,
Yeah.
And then eventually they did. They moved on and everything was fine. But those kind of things from young youth ministers, when something like that happens and they get the blame for it, they're thinking, this is what I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life as a youth minister. People being mad at me for something that I have no control over, that I can't do anything about, and not just the parents mad at me, not just some of the members, but the elders are mad at you or upset with you that you haven't handled that situation correctly.
Yeah.
Like, I've never had to deal with anything even remotely like this before, and now I'm thrown in the middle of it.
I want to mention one last con. I don't know if we hit this exactly, but and then I guess we'll let Hunter transition us into the pros. So pressure's on you now.
That's fine.
But youth ministry is weird, long hours, and they're all strung together, right? A lot of times, a retreat, you're gone for 48 to 55 hours, right? And there's no off time, right? There's no shutting down. I mean, you might go to sleep, but again, if something goes wrong, you've got to deal with that conflict in the middle of the night, or you've got, so it's long hours and that kind of thing. It's irregular hours. You go out of town with a trip, on a mission trip or a camp or whatever, you're responsible for 15 students or 45 students or however many you got. You're responsible for their families, for their safety. It's a weighing on you kind of feeling. The other side of it is you need to understand that youth ministry includes trips. It does. You're going to have trips. You're going to have retreats. You're going to have overnight trips. You're going to have week-long activities. And you might be bought into that idea. You need to be sure, especially those of you that are, and I think a lot of our listenership, when we've looked at the statistics, is in that just graduated to maybe 30 years old, in that range.
I think it's 24, like 16
that's,
to 24.
That's where our predominant amount
biggest listenership.
So you need to understand that who your spouse is matters to do this job. Not that your spouse is hired by the church, not that your spouse is responsible for teaching and doing all that. Jessica is awesome at supporting what I do in youth ministry, and she's not the kind of like youth minister's wife that's teaching all the classes and leading all the devotionals. That's not her. But she's behind the scenes helping do all the things that are happening that people never even know about. But the big thing you have to know going into it is it is not a job that you go to work and you come home and your family isn't impacted by it. It will impact every single facet of your family's life to the point that they will feel exhausted sometimes by your work schedule, by your trips, by your overnights, all that. You will absolutely have those moments where your kids want you to be home more, or they're frustrated that you're leaving again. You're going to have those kind of things that you encounter, and it's really hard. That's a really hard part of when you start having a family.
The last church that I worked at, I counted up how many days I was not like going to work, like VBS day, not a VBS day, even though at VBS I was working basically 12 hours every day. But a day where I stayed the night overnight during the summer. And there was 65 days. That was the summer. Okay. Yep. 65 days. 42 of those days I was staying overnight.
Yeah. That's so much.
And I brought that to, this is a con, I brought that to the eldership, and I was like, I was out of town 42. My family didn't see me for 42 nights in one summer. There's a 60-something day, 42 nights. And I was like, something's got to change here. Like, I can't keep doing this, I can't just leave my family for a whole month or more, a month and a half of the year to just fend for themselves. I'm not going to do that.
So I'm in the phase where, and you're starting into it, right? So she's in kindergarten, just finished kindergarten, or
yes,
yeah. So your oldest has just finished kindergarten. Mine are in going into 6th grade and 4th grade, and so I've been in the school age window for now, and the biggest challenge that I have seen in the last couple of summers is the time that my children are out of school and able to play and go to the park and go swim and do all the things that, like, the time of year that's the easiest for them to have fun with dad is the time that I am most out of pocket.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's really, really hard. As your kids age up, into school age, the amount of time that you can, take off on a trip to Disney, or you can take off, and leave in September, that stops, right?
Yeah.
It becomes your family has to do things in the summer because they got school in the fall. Yeah. And it's really hard when your family wants to do things in the summer and you've got your job that requires, it's a huge con of youth ministry.
That's one of another big thing that I wanted to talk about before we convert into the pros is, along with that same line of thinking, I remember there was a time where my brother invited us to a birthday party, and it was on a Sunday, and I was like, dude, I live 3 states away, and it's a Sunday, like I can't make it.
No.
And in their mind, they were thinking,
It's easier.
this is easy for everybody, and you should be able to be there. In my mind, I'm thinking this is impossible. I can't make it, unless I'm somehow able to finagle some way to get to get time off on that Sunday. It's just not going to work, And so I explained that to them, and they were like, "Oh, like you work backwards? Like, yeah, my biggest work day is Sunday, typically, anyways."
That was hard for my,
and it was just difficult. They just didn't understand. They don't understand, And then my summers are not open. But during the school year, I'm fine.
You can do whatever you want.
Do whatever we want.
Yeah.
I just have to kind of go by my daughter's schedule with school. But other than that,
my extended family, I think they struggled a little bit when we first got married because they're all teachers. And so for them, summer is prime time to go do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And they struggled a little bit early on with the fact that I wasn't available to go, when they wanted to do, or we couldn't plan a beach trip because I've got camp, or we couldn't plan this because we got VBS, or, and that was hard at first. And that has been a challenge for myself, for my wife, our family. And we've, navigated as best we can, and everybody understands it. But it definitely is a dynamic that's challenging. As you think about, this kind of career path, you got to think about how much it is absolutely going to impact not just your spouse, not just your children, but your in-laws, your extended family.
Yep.
It's going to impact everybody because you work this kind of job.
Well, and we talk about seasons of life, and I think we're in 2 different ones. For me, I try not to take off during the summer. And for right now, that works out fantastic. I get to be there all summer. I'm not missing the kids. They're out of school. I get to spend as much time with them as possible. Come August, early September, we'll take a family vacation.
Yep.
And that's how that's how it's always been going. But I know once Brooklyn gets into school, well, that's going to have to change. Or her teachers are going to hate me because I'm just going to pull her out of school whenever I feel like it. We're just going to go on vacation.
Yeah.
Either way. And my mom being a kindergarten teacher, she's already upset about that because I've mentioned, I'm like, hey, like we always go down to the farm in November and spend time with the family. I'm like, I'm just going to pull Brooklyn out of school. She's like, you can't do that. I'm like, what's she going to miss in a week of school?
In kindergarten.
In kindergarten, anytime before middle school, like what's she really going to miss? And you can teach her whatever you want to, and it works out. But
right.
I think we have to understand that. But more importantly, I think the elders have to understand that we're also trying to figure out what's going on in our lives to best suit our ministry. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say the church, but I've heard multiple churches doing this where elders just have some unrealistic expectations where it's, hey, I want you in the office having 40 hours of office work on top of you being out with the youth group every single night.
Yeah.
Or whatever that might be. Understand that, hey, if we get back from a retreat and we've been working 24 hours for the last 3 days every single day, maybe we're going to be at home a couple of days before we come back into the office, understanding that, we're still getting our work done while we're also trying to balance our family as well. So those are our cons. Do you have any more?
I just want to add to that. Whenever I got hired here, that one of the things that I requested is I said, hey, the expectation shouldn't be that my family is going to come to every youth group thing that we have. That's not the expectation. But if they do choose to come on things, then the church is going to pay for my family to come to whatever and pay for their tickets to whatever we're doing if they choose to come to. Mm-hmm. And that kind of helps that area there where I'm staying away from my family from those experiences, but also the fact that they get to come to things, and when they're there, 95% of the time. My wife is with the kids and they're, she's dealing with them and I'm doing my job, but recognizing that they are supporting my family being there with me in those times where we're away and stuff with camps and retreats. And
so not on what we're talking about, but adjacent to what you just said, we had an issue Sunday night there was a children's ministry, youth ministry kind of combined activity, and Lincoln and Elliot are in the children's ministry age group. And so there was an event, right? And some of their friends, or our family's friends, had rented this huge big slide for the weekend because they had a birthday party. They still had the slide, And they invited our family to come over and slide on Sunday evening, to bring the kids over. And I told Jessica, I was like, I can't do that. I've got this thing. And so the conversation was, well, we may go to the, over to their house and do the slide on it. And then there was a part of me that was like, oh, my kids, they're supposed to hit the thing. We're having an event. They should be. And then I was like, I don't require attendance of anybody else's kid. All right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I don't say they have to be there to anybody else's kid. And that's going to be a challenge in youth ministry. I already feel that, and you guys will feel that too, of feeling, there's some guilt when my child isn't at the activity. And I'm also wondering about, we move in August, we make a transition. This is going to be a new world, and I'll probably have some conversation about this on here. My son is moving into the youth group age.
The youth group.
And
Lincoln
and now,
has made it.
If there's an event that he doesn't want to do or doesn't want to go to, and he loves the youth stuff and he's excited about it, but there'll be something that he just don't want to do.
Yeah.
And how do I navigate that? Do I force my kid to be there because I'm the youth minister and it looks bad if my kid doesn't show up?
Yes.
But but the other side of it is, and Jessica and I have talked about this before, I don't want my children to harbor resentment towards church or towards my job or towards wanting to be involved with things because they're having to. What we talked about at the beginning, that it's forced instead of chosen.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a challenge. It's absolutely, family balance with ministry is one of the hugest cons, but is also, a major challenge.
But you also have to understand too that whole idea of forced versus not forced and chosen or whatever. In order for someone to know what to choose, they have to have a healthy option.
Yeah.
You can't just say, "Oh, you don't want to go." Well, then you don't have to. You never have to come. You never have to do. You never have to.
And we have students that get that choice all the time. And
but then
more and more every year.
But then when school happens, their parents are like, "No, you are not skipping school. I don't care. We'll kill somebody if you skip school." And I'm like, okay, but what about
or your rec ball, t-ball practice
Right.
is mandatory, but going to VBS isn't.
You've got to be at the 6 a.m. workouts.
Yeah.
But
all right, well, let's transition.
All right, we're going to transition a little bit. We're going to transition. We just talked about a lot of cons, and though some of these cons are silly, though some of these cons might not be huge cons to you, they are cons to a lot of people within youth ministry. But now I really want us to turn our focus onto the pros of youth ministry, because it's very easy for us. We talked a little bit about this with the burnout side of it. It's very easy for us to get caught up in all the cons. It's very easy for us to only look at the downsides of youth ministry. But what we're here to really say is all the upsides that come with youth ministry, why it's such a fantastic job, why it's the best job in the entire world.
Yeah.
And one of those things is this deep sense of calling and purpose. And I'm not going to add to identity. I think a lot of my identity right now in my life is me being a youth minister. I tell people all the time, there in the past 10 years or 7 years full time at Flint, there's not been a single day that I wake up not excited to go to work.
Yeah.
I absolutely love youth ministry because I feel like it's something that's made for me, and it hasn't always been the thing. I tell kids all the time when I was really young, my job that I wanted to have was a trash man.
Oh,
I wanted that because I thought it was so cool to stay on the side of that trash truck and then hop out and then throw the trash up and then stand back on it. They don't do that anymore. But that was my dream. I wanted to be a garbage man. That was
the claw took
thing.
your job.
Yeah, the claw
that
took
comes
it.
out and
but then what happened to me, and what we'll get into this as well, is I had people come into my life who made a big impact on me that has led me to youth ministry itself. I've had Brandon Edwards is one of my youth ministers. Jeremy Paper, I had both of them as youth ministers, and they both played really big roles in me wanting to be a youth minister. Yeah. And just seeing them and the impact they had on my life, to know that I wanted to have that impact on other people's life.
Well, I've said it multiple times to multiple people, hundreds of people. I truly don't think I would be a Christian. I certainly would not be a youth minister had it not been for Jeremy, the one that's right here.
Yeah.
That impacted my life.
Shout out Jeremy, man.
Yeah.
What a guy.
mean, and think about
this guy.
I remember when I graduated high school, Jeremy came over and he gave me a hug and he was like, "Hey man, I'm so proud of you." And I was like, "Get off me!" And I just went off to somebody else. And Jeremy was like, "I made this trip over here and
now you just want a hug from Jeremy."
And so that's right, and he won't do it anymore. No, but I do want to say there's a reason why when I was in the end of my 11th grade year and I made this transition of like, I'm going to start taking this stuff seriously, and I'm going to do, and it had nothing to do with anything other than some discussions that I had with Jeremy, the impact that he had in my life, and the difference that he made. Because I think I was in 10th grade when we moved churches to Hebron.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
9th or 10th grade.
So you were 16.
And so I was in 10th grade. And that moment there where we started the church at Hebron, and Jeremy just invested into all of us, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who will say this in our youth group, because there was so much there that I didn't realize until I got to Hebron. And it took about a year for me to recognize how much of an impact that Jeremy made in my life, But again, I certainly would not be a youth minister, and I'm not sure I would even be a Christian if it wasn't for the impact that Jeremy made in my life.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of purpose, that's the kind of calling that we have. That's the reason I'm a youth minister, is I look back at my life and I say, man, I am so glad that I had good parents who brought me to church and made sure I was there, and a youth minister who actually cared about me.
Yeah. And not, my head's going to have a hard time getting through this door when I leave. But no, not just me, but you had other adults that cared about ministering to youth in and around your life, whether it be through camp or through area-wide devotionals, people you met, you interacted with. I think of somebody like Big Red, that probably poured into you in ways that you didn't even realize it at the time. And impacted you in ministry. But one of the pros that I would say around youth ministry is what you just spoke to, is the opportunity to disciple or to mentor students in a one-to-one way. Do I think that I have all the best answers to mentor and disciple?
Yes.
No, I don't.
No.
I don't think that. Is there absolutely people that are going to give better advice? For sure. But there's something so fulfilling about doing that kind of work in someone else's life. I think that the times in my life where I've been the most anxious or depressed or frustrated or whatever, when I realize it's times when I've been focused more on self and haven't been focused on pouring into someone else. And so when I find myself discipling, pouring into others, mentoring, whatever it might be, pouring relationship into someone else, it fulfills me, right? I would absolutely say one of the pros that I experience in youth ministry is the opportunity to be filled by filling others, in that way.
Right.
And that's been something that's been super valuable to me about youth ministry.
And I'm going to hype both y'all up real quick, because I think you really hit something really good right there, Michael, what you said. This idea of opportunity to make eternal impact.
Yeah.
Jeremy had that impact on you. Mm-hmm. Jeremy probably didn't know in the very beginning that you would be the youth minister that you are today.
No.
But think about that.
Oh no, he knew.
Recently. We've been talking about this idea of generational Christianity, of how far back did that start, and you continuing this generational Christianity through your family. But what about generational Christianity through in youth ministry? When Brandon first got to Buford, or he also had Colt Mahan to help him out, and he was a big part as well. When they both first got to Buford, they probably looked to me and laughed. I was like, no, there's no way this guy's going to Fried-Harbin. There's no way he's going to be a youth minister, stuff like that. But it's that impact, that eternal impact that they had, that eternal impact on you. And then I get to sit back and see the impact that Jeremy had on you, the impact you're having on kids in your youth group right now, and then the impact they're going to have on the future kids of the church. And it just never stops.
Along with that vein of thinking, just this year, I've had some really, really cool stuff that's happened. One of them is I had an intern, and I poured a lot into him, and I was doing some big stuff. Patrick Franz, he's awesome.
I thought you were talking about your intern sitting
not right now.
He hasn't poured anything into
we'll
this.
We'll get to him in just a second. But Patrick Franz, seeing he's become a youth minister, and he's very good at it. And seeing the impact that I do too. Seeing the impact that he's made. But see, he was Philip Jenkins' kid too. He was in Philip Jenkins' youth group, and then I was his youth minister, and he was my intern. And we did this fun little 3-way youth ministry thing, and now he's a youth minister, and seeing the cool stuff he's doing. Then I get a phone call from one of the students that I was a youth minister for, and he called me and he just said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I'm going to CRC
Yeah.
Shout
Crowley's
out.
Ridge College.
Go Pioneers.
Yep, go Pioneers. Stephen DeWitt, you're the man.
I would love you, Stephen.
Noah.
And he said,
Shout out.
yeah, Noah Danke, that's right. And he said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to be a youth minister because of the impact that you made in my life. And I was like,
That's a cool feeling, man.
and I'm going to tell you, it was awesome. But to think the kid that told me that, I would have never in a million years thought that this kid is going to be a youth minister, or this kid would even have the desire to be a youth minister, and he did.
And what's cool about that is, like, man, I see this in Michael, right? And Michael's seeing this with this, with Patrick. I have no idea how many hundreds of kids since Michael started in youth ministry that he has impacted in a positive way and made an influence in their life and drawn them closer to Christ. I have no idea what that number is, right? But it's a lot. Am I the only influence that got Michael there? No, not at all. But it's really awesome to know that I've had a role in serving in his life that has helped him to be a role at serving in someone else's life. And there's going to be, Patrick is an example of that, is pouring now into other students because of the work that you did, right?
Right.
And I say that, mine points back to Bobby Thomas. When I came into Arab, I made connection with Bobby Thomas, who was the youth minister. He moved there about the same time that I did, and made me want to pursue that kind of work because I saw something impactful in him in the way that he loved on and cared for the students in our ministry, and made me want to desire that. And Bobby would point that back to a guy that he was connected to when he was at college, and they would. It's what you said generationally.
Yeah.
We are having lasting impact on multiple generations of students and their families. That's one right now that I'm working with on a real estate thing that I'm trying to impact, or I had impact on him when he was in a student in youth ministry, and now he's going to be married and he's going to have children one day. And I hope that the work that we did way back in youth ministry is going to impact what kind of dad and husband he is and how he raises his family to know who Jesus is.
And, just to keep that going, like April's dad was a youth minister for years and years. And April, again, that generational thing, April is now a part of that too. And so she's, and it's just a really, really cool thing when you think about it. And it's, getting a phone call and saying, hey, Michael, I'm getting married. Will you be the person?
Oh yeah,
who, that was such a cool moment for me,
especially kids that met in your youth group.
Yes,
that one's a cool one.
I mean, it's more than just the ministers. It's more than just you ministering to somebody and they became a minister, but it's all those kids that still want to reach out to you, talk to you, look to you for advice. It's that building lasting relationships, not just these relationships for the 7 years that you're in this youth group, but it's far beyond that. Right. How many kids have messaged you while they're in college asking you questions or just wanting to catch up or wanting to grab lunch? But it's also not giving up on kids either. It's seeing that, you're going to have some kids that it clicks immediately, that they know right from wrong. They know what they need to do. They're going to show up. They're going to be a part of this youth group. They know what it is to be Christ-like. Yeah. And you're going to have other kids that just show up. They go through the motions. I
mean, literally, just the last month, I had 2 youth group kids who were in 2020. They graduated in 2020. They messaged me because they were just happened to be in town where I'm at. Well, it was in Huntsville, but they drove to Decatur and were like, "Can you meet us in Decatur? We want to get dinner and we want to hang out and do something." And I was like, "Dude, of course I will." And so I went and we ate dinner and we hung out and we had a lot of fun together. But times like that, where they're both Christians. One of them is married and they're actually living in Huntsville. The other one is getting married next year in Greece.
Oh,
not like in
that sounds really messy.
Very, very messy. No, not that way, but in the country, Greece.
Greece going to need some Dawn
Greece,
soap.
Mississippi,
which is really, really cool. And they thought about me. Here they are. 5 years removed from ever being in my youth group, and then they thought about me and said, "Hey, we're going to be in the area. Can we go?" That's just a cool deal.
That kind of thing. Even if they don't like Michael went on and pursued full-time career youth ministry. Right. Patrick is pursuing youth ministry. Right. We had one a few years ago named Jacob, and he was in Tullahoma. And I got to have one of the things we're talking about here with pros is having opportunity to invest in these people during these very formative years of their life. Right. During their teen years. And so I got to have that influence with him. and we were at an area wide like singing thing or something. It was at Owens Crossroads, and we were up there, and
I have to be there Wednesday.
Jacob walks in.
No, I have to. I get to be
and
there.
I was like, what are you doing, man? Do you go to church here? He goes, no, we came for the event. And I was like, oh, really? He goes, I brought my youth group. And I was like, what? Now, this is a kid that did electrical engineering, okay? He didn't go into youth ministry. He's not pursuing it as a career. And he walks in with a group of students, in tow, typical, drove them here on the bus. They're here. And he is serving in his church as a volunteer youth worker, youth minister, and teaches Bible class every Sunday with teens. And doesn't need to do this as a career. He has a great job. It works for NASA, works in engineering. But because of the impact that happened on him during formative years of his teen years, he is now paying that forward and being impactful to other students now.
Yeah.
As a volunteer in his local church.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Another really cool thing is, man, what's your favorite thing about youth ministry? I'm curious. Hunter, what's your favorite thing about youth ministry?
It's going to sound silly. I don't have to take vacation to do all the fun stuff.
That's a great answer.
That's actually really good.
And we're we don't really think about that. Like we went to Maywood week 0. Shout out week 0.
We didn't have to take time
It's
off.
the best week. But all of these other people that volunteered did not. They had to take time off of their job. And for us,
Lost
that is our
pay.
job.
Yeah.
How great is that our job is spending a week with kids at Maywood Christian Camp so they can grow spiritually.
Yeah.
That's one. Second one is
That's a great answer.
getting to see firsthand of it clicking to people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay, Jeremy,
that one he hit 2 of them. I would also say the pizza. I mean, I just really like pizza. It's a
I'm
big
tired
one for
of
me.
pizza. I'm so tired of pizza.
Listen,
Pizza and Mountain Dew, man.
I love pizza.
I do too, but good gracious.
I think that's why I've survived youth ministry so long.
Are we going to
Is-
Pizza Ed after this?
at 9 a.m.?
Oh, what time they open? They don't have breakfast?
They should.
But the reason I asked that is because I knew what your answers were going to be.
Yeah.
I knew what your answer. It is that moment when the kid gets it.
The click.
That and it's and that happened for me at the end of my 11th grade year, start of
Yep.
the summer, that going into my senior year. That's when it clicked for me, where I said, "Oh, I get it now. Like I understand
This
how
is serious.
This is real. This
Yeah.
is something." And at all ages, you see it. Coleman McQuiston. He listens. Shout out to Coleman.
He's in that right now.
Dude, he's right there. Like I just saw it. It was at camp. He came up to me. He said something to me, and I was like, "Oh, Coleman gets it,"
That's it.
And I
It's
got
clicked.
pumped for him. And he's not
Yep.
even a kid in my youth group.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when that moment happens, it just happened at Uplift with one of our students talking to Riley, and I look at him, and now at church the other day. He's sitting here. I've sat by him a few times during church, or sat in front of him, or whatever, or beside him, or whatever.
Satin.
Satin.
Knitted.
Thank you.
I want to go back to whatever
and-
word later that you said earlier. I don't remember.
I
It
look
was
at
awesome.
look at him, and he's in. He's bought in, and I'm like, man, he gets it.
He
he's
understands
there.
the
He
impact
understands.
he's making, why it matters. and he gets it.
And he gets it. And so seeing that moment, and you get to see it at all different stages. Like sometimes they get it in 6th grade, sometimes they
Yeah.
get it in 10th grade. Sometimes it takes 3 years in college before they actually get it. But you get to watch that happen.
Yeah.
And then you get to be the person to share that with their parents. Hey, I just saw something that happened with your child. You need to
Yes.
really focus in on this and make sure that you're cultivating this because he gets it. He's there. He's made it, or she's made it. And having that moment and watching that happen and seeing, all this time and effort and work that you've put in, and then seeing it happen, seeing the kid who gets it, that is awesome.
Well, it's because you remember your moment when that happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
For me, growing up, church was always a priority, but we also played sports, and we know how that goes. And we're always gone to sports stuff. We're at sporting events, and it was Colt Mahana who came to help Brandon Edwards start the youth program. Colt's now at Faulkner, doing great things over there. But he sat me down one day, and I'd already been baptized, but I was always at sports. I was always doing other things, and he sat me down. It was just me and him. I think we were playing hide and seek in the church. And he said, "Hey," he said, "come over here real quick. Let me talk to you for a minute." And he sat down, and he was very blunt with me. And I think it was that relationship. He knew how far he could push me without me
Right.
breaking and running away. But he sat me down and he looked at me and said, when are you going to start taking this serious? He said, you're here, you're present. He said, when are you going to finally be a leader and actually take your spirituality serious? And it was that conversation was that aha moment of, oh, I am here. I'm just showing up. I'm not really doing anything else to make me realize, hey, I need to start taking my spirituality more serious. That led into youth ministry. That led into, wanting to do more and wanting to get up in front of people and talk about God. And shortly after that, I think I gave like my first Bible class lesson to people. And, it's 15 minutes maybe. And it was, but that's what started it, were these aha moments. And it's understanding that it's different for everybody.
I remember that moment for me because Jeremy had passed out our summer schedules for our youth ministry stuff. And it was like, here's camp, here's work camp, here's a retreat thing. I don't remember all we were doing. That was back when they had the Six Flags.
There's also the TNTs.
The TNTs and all that stuff. And I remember I took this to my coach. And I said, it was like close to the last day of the school year. And I took it to him and I was like, hey, this is my youth ministry, my youth group calendar. I'm not going to make it to any of these practices.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, yeah, you are. And I was like, I'm not.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, man. I said, I've got to choose what's more important to me. And my faith is way more important than this basketball team, And I don't want y'all to, I was a really good basketball player.
We know.
It reflected on the court the next fall.
I did not. I stayed after every practice that I made it to, and I ran. What do they call them now? You can't
suicides?
You can't call them suicides anymore. That's against the law or something.
Is it?
What do they call them now?
Soft.
Do y'all know what they call them now?
Nah, I just call them
Anyways,
suicides.
we did suicides, and I ran.
We'll just bleep it out.
Dude, I don't know
You can
how
only do it
many
once.
that I had to.
Too far.
I don't know how many of those that I had to do, but I mean, I would stay after practice and I had a coach, Coach Neal. If you're listening to this, you're the man. But he would stay after me and with me, and everyone I would just have to keep running constantly. But I made up for all of it. But I still didn't get to play, And I remember being frustrated that I wasn't getting to play, but also, or that I didn't get to start. I would go in after the first whistle. But I was frustrated because I didn't get to start. But then I said, you know what?
If that's all you got to say.
It was worth it. It was worth it, But finding that moment, seeing that moment in the kids where they finally get it, and they say, this is more important. This is a bigger thing than anything else in my life. And when that moment comes, it's awesome.
So I will say this. I think that a lot of youth ministers struggle with I'm gonna call it ADD, ADHD. Where I think whatever the letters are now for it. My generation, I think, was an undiagnosed generation of this. I think I probably had this and was never diagnosed. And so one of the pros that I love about youth ministry is I love the diversity of what I do every day. Mm-hmm. One day I'm a salesman. One day I'm doing marketing. One day I'm making spreadsheets. One day I'm running meetings. One day I'm planning activities. One day I'm taking kids to a water park. One day, it changes every day. One day this sounds morbid. One day I'm at a funeral, and I'm being a part of encouraging a family in that way. One day
burying
I'm
a dog.
And one day I'm burying a dog, right?
One day you're cleaning the baptistry.
Yeah.
I'm doing one day I'm cleaning up the homeless people's trash behind the building. But it's very dynamic. And I'm not a static person. I struggle with sitting in the same place for a long period of time. I struggle sitting here doing these recordings. Like Riley's sitting over here behind me probably laughing because I get distracted and I play with something on my computer and I mess with something and I mess with my cord. I get bored. And so I like the diversity of youth ministry. I love the creativity of it. It's something that I like to use all my different skill sets or develop different skill sets that I may not have yet to do on a daily basis. I like that I don't do the same thing every day from 9 to 5. I don't clock in, clock out, and do the exact same thing over and over again.
I love getting to just be creative. Yeah. It's my job.
Let's be creative.
We're thinking creatively. But I love to be creative. I love just sitting back and thinking up fun new things that we can do, fun new ideas, fun new things that interest me. And I love that whole aspect of our job. I had a really cool mentor, Spencer Furby. He was a great coworker. Really, really cool guy. And he made this comment one of my first times in youth ministry, or one of my first moments with him talking about youth ministry. And he was like, man, I always want somebody to try something new. He's like, if it fails, it fails. Who cares? But if it doesn't fail, what kind of impact could it have? And he was like, so I want you to feel the freedom to try new things and do new things and experience new things. And he was like, so, because when that happens, it could make a huge impact. It might fail, and if it does, just don't do it again. It's not a big deal. But don't be afraid to try new things and create, make some new creative things. That's the reason why this podcast was started, was because me and Hunter were talking about we need to create. We need to create. We've got so much stuff. We've got so many things that we could offer. We want to give back to the people that have given to us.
Man.
Well, listen.
Hey, I want to say this. When we started this, when we talked about the cons, we all sounded really depressed and our episode sounded really sad. And when we went to the pros, there was a shift in our demeanor. And you could hear our excitement and joy and love for what we do in ministry. Hopefully people make it past the sad part, because I think that we all opened up more when we talked about the things that we love about it, because we do love it. We're passionate about it. And we care about it. And we love our students. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing to recognize in the nonverbal that was happening.
Yeah. And I want y'all to recognize the spiritual rewards always outweigh the practical challenges and the things. And I just want to add this kind of stuff in here at the very end. At Freed-Hardeman, and I might be wrong on this, but this is how I always felt. At Freed-Hardeman, they said things constantly like, if you can do anything else, do it. Yeah. Or they made comments about how it's the hardest job ever, and it's difficult and all this stuff. Like, some of that has some merit to it. Some of it, I get it, but you don't have to 100%. I could go and do. I bet you anything. I can go and do real estate, and I make a lot more money. And I probably wouldn't enjoy it half as much, but I could probably make more money. Probably 2 times what I make now, But I don't care about that, So the truth is, if I can do anything else, do it. No, that's not the truth. The truth is, if you are wanting to have something that is going to far outweigh anything that you'll ever do in your whole life, youth ministry is it. And it doesn't matter if you can do something else or whatever. I encourage you, if you can do youth ministry, do it.
Yeah.
Let's flip that around, The colleges, all of the Bible majors at all the major colleges and everything are at an all-time low right now. One of the colleges, we won't name any of them, one of the colleges had 4 Bible majors graduate from their college. When the whole college was founded for Bible majors. Like, that's the whole purpose of it. And now it's their smallest degree field. Yeah. 4 Bible majors at a Christian college that graduated this past year. It's insane to think that's where we're at now. But I think that constant drilling into people's head, all of these cons, it's going to be a tough job, and it's a thankless job, and those are constantly the things that are talked about, but they never talk about the side that we just talked about, where we were pumped up about things. I'm going to leave this recording feeling super excited and because of the job that I get to do. I wake up every morning and I'm excited about what the next day has.
There is no greater job than youth ministry.
No, there's not.
And I joked about it a while back. I had to be at Heritage for something that day, and I went to class, but it was also the day that the Jenkins Institute were doing the Better Conference.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I walked in just to say hey to a couple people, and Austin Johnson saw me. He said, "Oh, did you finally decide to become a preacher?" I said, "Why in the world would I take a step down and become a preacher?"
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like the worst thing ever.
Yeah. You're talking about the stepping stone to youth ministry?
It's the stepping stone down from that.
Yeah.
But it's such a great job. It's fantastic. It's worth it. It's so, I like what you said. It's different every single day. You don't know what you're getting into.
I encourage you, if you're a high school student or a college student and you're listening to this and you're thinking about youth ministry, I encourage you to do it. It is the best job that you could ever do. I promise you.
Maybe you don't want to do it full time, but there are a lot of churches that could really use a part-time or a volunteer youth minister.
Definitely.
Somebody that can step in and can lead that group. So I want to leave you with 2 books. One, if you've been to any of our booths that we've had in the past, we usually always have this book there. It's called A Youth Minister's Heart by Dale Jenkins.
Yep.
I absolutely love it. It is not a scholarly book. It is not something that is going to take you 2 days to read. You can sit down. There's a lot of pictures in it.
15 minutes?
But it kind of
that.
just does what we
There's a
talked
lot of
about.
pictures.
It talks about the
Just
cons.
the perfect youth ministry book.
It has some great pictures, but it has some cons. But then it just ends with all these uplifting things that shows why youth ministry is so great. So if you're looking into youth ministry, I would highly recommend that book. Another book that if you're really wanting to dive into youth ministry, really get a better understanding, it's called In Christ Image. By Kurt Brothers. There are a lot of youth ministers. Michael's one of them that were able to write a chapter in the book, and it really covers a wide range of youth ministry, college ministry, children's ministry. It covers a lot of things, but you will learn a lot reading that book.
Yeah, check out our website. There's a link on our website that you can follow to get that book if you'd like.
But both books are great. I definitely recommend that Youth Minister's Heart for anybody. I usually read it about once a month. I've had a copy for both of y'all that's sitting in my room, and I still haven't gotten it.
Yeah, I
Thanks
really
for that.
appreciate to have that.
Sounds like a great book.
It is great.
I look forward to reading it one day.
I've just been reading y'all's instead of having to go get mine.
So, guys, y'all have anything else you want to say before we close out?
It's worth it.
Yeah,
It's
do
the
it,
best.
man. It's the best.
Pizza and Mountain Dew every night, going to camp.
Real
It's
tough.
fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you would follow us on all the social media things, we have Facebook, Instagram, and make sure that you're following that. We don't post on that as much as we should. That's all on me, by the way.
Well, we need a social media manager is what we need.
I just don't do
Sounds like
social
an intern
media.
job.
I just don't like it. But the things that we do post, we love it. So. But we're grateful for you guys listening. Make sure to leave a comment. Make sure to rate us 5 stars because it does help with the algorithm. Guys, I want you to know this. I got online. I went to Spotify on somebody else's phone, so it wasn't my phone. They weren't following us or anything. And I searched the OKS Youth Ministry I just searched Youth Ministry Podcast, and we came up on the algorithm. So I'm just letting you know, just searching Youth Ministry Podcasts, and our podcast popped up. So please make sure that you're rating and reviewing, and then also leave a comment. It all helps with the algorithm. It brings our podcast higher up in that whenever somebody search for a Youth Ministry Podcast, and that benefits us in a big way. So
we hope that your ministry is blessed.
Wait,
not yet.
You got me. You got it. I was raising my hand to say something.
Oh man.
Thanks for joining us today in the important conversation of youth ministry. Go and follow us on Instagram and check out oksyouthministry.com for more information about our upcoming episodes. We'll be dropping a new episode every Wednesday morning, and we look forward to talking with you again next week. And hey, it's okay to be the OKS youth minister around, but let's all strive to be just a little bit better.